Thank you so much, everyone, for joining on a Saturday evening. Sorry for spoiling your Saturday plans, but I'm sure that you're going to find this way more productive as compared to any other thing which you would have been doing on Saturday night. Just kidding. But we're going to be very informative in this session. We're going to talk about how do you prepare for group discussion, how do you prepare for campus placements in personal interviews. And I'm myself going to share my resume format. I'm going to tell you towards the end of the session, how do you build your own resume as well. And of course, like towards the end of the session, we also have a mock interview where I am going to be the interviewee this time. So I'm nervous and I am going to answer the questions which are usually asked to a CA student once they clear their CA exams. So allow me to introduce my flatmate who stays with me, Manuraj Garg. So he is graduate from ISB Hyderabad. He'll give a flavor of how do MBAs also perform in interviews and how to crack group discussions, because in MBAs you need to just ensure that you are doing good with GD and PI. Otherwise, you won't be able to get into B schools like IIM Ahmedabad or ISB Hyderabad. So he is an ex-investment banker, by the way. He has worked at Wells Fargo. Prior to that, he was working in Axis Bank and RBL Bank, and he has done his MBA from ISB Hyderabad. He's a batch of 2021 from ISB. So thank you so much, Manuraj, for taking out time and guiding the entire audience. I am super confident that it's going to be very, very evaluative and informative to all of them. So thanks a lot for joining in.
Thanks, Kushal. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure being in conversation with you. Hi, everyone, and I'm really excited to be here.
Perfect. So Manoj, like just before we begin, right? So everyone, like we are going to keep a very simple structure for this session. I am going to ask a few questions to Manuraj. I myself am going to answer them, and then we are going to have a mock interview, and then we are going to share my resume where I am going to walk you through what are some of the pointers that you should keep in mind, and I'll share that format with everyone. So Manuraj, like before we begin, right? Can you tell us like how many interviews you would have given as a candidate in like how many organizations?
Okay, I think that's an interesting one. I would say I would have interviewed with probably more than 20-25 different organizations. So, and with an average of 3 to 4 interviews with each of them. So about 100 interviews is what I would say.
Wow, that's a big number, by the way. Like I think 100 interviews. I'm glad that like I'm just surprised that how did you control your nervousness or excitement over there. And apart from that, you also were in Wells Fargo, so I'm sure that you would also be taking interviews of people, right? So how many interviews would you have taken as a hiring manager?
Not particularly to hire somebody, but I've had the opportunity to hire people as being a mentor to them or to do a preliminary screening for hiring, not as a final decision authority. But again, probably 10, 15, maybe 20 there, and maybe another 20-25 while I was with different organizations. So
Got
probably
it.
40 and all is all.
Cool, perfect. So I think you're the best person to guide everyone here. How do you ensure to crack GDs and PIs and the do's and don'ts in GDs and PIs? So let's begin with group discussion. This is an interesting topic. So can you help us understand like what exactly are the do's and don'ts which people should keep in mind in GDs, and how should they tackle group discussions in their placements as well?
Sure. So I think there are two things to it, right? One is your essentials or your fundamentals that, what are like the musts, which you rightly said, do's and don'ts. And the other is what I would probably want, our students to sort of understand a framework on, how do we deliver in a GD. So I think when it comes to the do's and don'ts or the absolute fundamentals, I think uh, 5 or 6 things which one should keep in mind. I think probably start with respect. It's extremely, extremely important to be respectful to all the members of the group discussion, be respectful to the entire cohort, be respectful to your moderator, and maintain the sanctity of the room, right? To read the room, to understand that, what is really happening. And imbibing that culture is part of being respectful. So I think that's an absolute must. Second, I would say listening, right? So a lot of people think that group discussion is about contributing as much as they can, speaking as fast, as much. I don't think that's appropriate or that's something which is the correct way to do it. I think the idea behind a group discussion is to sort of get a quorum on what you've thought to either influence somebody or to have them influence you as per what they are thinking, right? Either or listening plays a pivotal role, right? Like you listen not just to the topic, but you also try to listen to what other people have to say. Unless you do that, you will not be able to deliver, build on it, break that argument down, accentuate it, or support it. So I think that's fundamentally very important. Next, I would say probably be concise, right? I would say less is more when it comes to, So this is something which I do, when I interview somebody, I force them to, summarize in 30 seconds or 1 minute, or I force them to, submit an assignment in one page, so that they are not generic. They don't end up making vague statements, but they're forced to think critically and they can deliver something which is powerful, impactful, and punchy, right? So which adds value to what you're saying. So I think less is more. So being concise and coherent goes a long way. I think fourth, there is no one right way to agree with someone, right? So you could agree with what somebody is saying in principle, but you could disagree with them on the concept. So it's okay to agree to agree. It's also okay to disagree. So I think that's very important. Somebody said, I'm not audible. If I'm not audible to the others, could the others also drop in a text?
No, it's fine. You're audible.
I am. Okay. Okay. Then I think emotion, right? It's very important to emote when you're talking. So, if you say something like, okay, these are the principles of group discussion, 1, 2, 3, I don't think you listen to me, right? I don't think the audience would be engaged. So it's important to smile. It's important to use your hand gestures. What you're saying should be complemented by the muscles that are visible to the audience, which is your hand, your face, your smile, right? So it's very important to accentuate and augment what you're saying by using or emoting in the appropriate fashion. And I think lastly, it's very, very fundamental to support everyone in the group, right? And by support, I don't mean I agree with your concept or I agree with your line of thinking, but it's again, it circles back to the first point, which is, being respectful. So I could support somebody by letting them speak. And I think it's okay if somebody is in dissent to what I'm saying. They don't have to agree with me in order for me to respect them. I can respect multitude of opinions. I can respect diverging thoughts, but it's very important for me to, support others. I think these are the fundamentals, but I think this is something which all of us already know, right? So here's something which, I would really want our students to think about is a framework. How do you strategically uh, participate in a group discussion, right? What is a winning argument? How do you sort of tackle the pressure, the nervousness, right? Like you asked me a few minutes back that, wow, so many interviews. How did you tackle the nervousness? And you opened by saying that I will be interviewed, and I'm sure everyone here is excited for that segment where Kushal Lodha himself will be answering questions. And he said that, oh, I am nervous today. Obviously, he was joking, but this is true. There is an element of nervousness when you are put on the spot in an interview or when you're in a group discussion. So I think here's a very simple, fundamental 4 or 5 step framework that everybody can follow, right? And this is something which is very intuitive. I think first things first, understand the topic, right? If you do not listen, you cannot understand the topic. Once you understand the topic, you'll be able to frame your initial thoughts. You'll be able to build a premise. You'll be able to launch an initial argument. I think next is to structure your thoughts, right? I think and talk and not the other way around. If you say something and then you think about it, you probably did that in a haste as opposed to, thinking. Now, thinking is part of structuring and delivery is part of talking. So structure and deliver or think and talk. One is an MBA parlance, one is the normal English parlance or the common language, right? People say think and talk. I think then is to build your argument. How do you build your argument? You make supporting examples, or you try to, get more people to sway on your side that, okay, I think I agree with what this gentleman is saying, or I agree with what this lady is saying, right? And you try to build your argument by giving examples. And I think another important aspect of this framework is to sort of build your persona, right? Building a persona doesn't mean that what the opinion that you're siding with, but establishing your position as a leader, initiator, follower, observer, or it could be any of these roles that you could play in a group discussion. And I think neither of them are better than the other, right? I think people assume that if I break into the GD first, I have an advantage. Probably, but you could also have a first mover's disadvantage, right? So I think it's important to think, structure, and then deliver. And establishing a persona is part of the delivery mechanism. I think lastly, it's important to sort of give a conclusion to it. How do you do that? Is you either solidify on what you've already built on your initial thought or your premise, or you can change your stance, which shows that you are malleable. You're amicable to what other people are saying. Your thoughts are malleable, and you are not extremely opinionated, which means that you are analytical, but you're also open to change, right? So part of group discussion means being part of a group or rather a team in a real life scenario. So I think that's extremely, extremely important. And if you could just, okay, somebody says, can you elaborate on persona? I think that's a very good question, Aman. how do you elaborate on what persona is? Persona could be, I am a leader, right? How do I become a leader? I am sitting in a group of 5 people and we are discussing on a topic. And I feel that not me, but my colleague right here hasn't gotten the chance to speak. So I tell the forum that, okay, can we allow, let's say his name is Harsh, that, I think Harsh has something to say, ladies and gentlemen. Can we give Harsh a chance to speak? So it establishes my persona as a leader. Also, this is the right thing to do because I think all the members in the group should get a chance to voice their opinion. It is a group discussion after all, right? So I think establishing a persona as a leader, as a follower, as an observer, I mean, either of these personas is extremely important, but you need to be remembered by something, right? When the interviewer or when the moderator or the mediator walks out of the room, they need to remember your persona as either of these. So I think yeah, that's a simple
Right.
framework to follow, and I think it should help
That's a very granular answer. Thank you so much for such a structured and granular answer about how do you like ace in just group discussion. Guys, one thing which I would want to add here, right? Like when I was giving my interviews, I was asked a group discussion on a topic like, do you think GST is a boon or bane for the Indian economy? And one other topic was whether demonetization is something which is good or bad for the Indian economy. So in topics like these, where let's say it's a technical topic and you don't know how to answer these questions, you don't need to start always. Like if you're just starting a group discussion, doesn't mean that you're going to get some brownie points. Just remember that. It's just that if you know something and if you think that you have confidence in that topic, then you can start off. Even if you speak second or third or fourth, that's absolutely fine because these people are testing how well do you articulate your thoughts and how well do you interject and communicate in that group discussion. That was the topic in ITC Limited when I was giving my interview. We were given a case study, by the way, and that case study was basically where one of the persons has done something wrong and you are his friend and you both work in the same company and you are going to now decide whether to report to the HR of the company or you just keep it to yourself. So if you were in that situation, what would you do? This was the topic of group discussion. So GDs can be divided into multiple parts: fact based, opinion based. Abstract topics can also be given to you. One of my friends in her interview at Procter and Gamble, she was given a topic like red is the new blue. Now you just have to be like kya topic kar diya? Like this is something which is very abstract. You don't have to be nervous, you don't have to panic at that point in time, but it's like you whatever you feel कि जो भी बोलना है ये pointers पे या ये topics पे, you can just start off with that. Like red is the new blue में whatever you feel comes to your mind, you can maybe just jot it down whatever are your thoughts where they give you for a time to think for 1 or 2 minutes and then you start off if you have something to speak. So there are like a lot of topics, a lot of abstract topics which can be given to you. Maybe in the chat box it'll be fun to do, guys. Like let's say I am giving you an activity here, I want all of you to type it in the chat box, that if this is the topic given to you, I would request all of you, how would you start or what would you think? So if the topic is red is the new blue, can anyone type it in the chat box? Like, what would you think, or maybe what is something that comes to your mind when you think about this topic? Red is the new blue. How would you start? If there's anyone in the chat box, if anyone wants to type, what can they do? Then we can just see the answers. New color in advertising. Okay. Startups. Okay, we have some interesting answers. That the circumstances generated during COVID are the new normal. Okay, this is interesting. Red means something dangerous. Blood gives life, like blood bank, important for a life. Red is the new blue. Oh wow, very Zomato, YouTube over Facebook. Oh wow, so this is very interesting. Red versus red is the new blue. Valuation logo of CA changes. Very creative, guys. Manoj, if you would have been in this GD, what would you structure like? Red is the
So
new blue.
I think one thing which comes to my mind, and it takes me back to, I think, being at business school, is red ocean strategy versus blue ocean strategy. So that's how I think. Red ocean strategy, just to give context, is getting into a price war to kill the competition. So let's say Coke and Pepsi, back in the day, they have a history of getting into a price war. So Coke reduced its price, Coca-Cola beverages, and Pepsi kept doing that until it matched Coke's price, and then Coke did that again, and Pepsi did that again. So it's a lose-lose situation, you know. And this happens in an oligopoly market like Coke, Pepsi, or the toothpaste market, products of those category. And Blue Ocean is realizing that, there's a consumption story, there's a consumer out there, and there's a vast market. You can operate, and I can simultaneously operate in the market, and we can both have healthy profits and margins. The ocean is blue and big, as opposed to the ocean is red and bloody, right? So that is the whole concept of, bleeding blood versus bleeding blue, right? Like, So
Right. There's a very interesting comment. Rishabh is mentioning red is the new blue. I can relate it to IPL. If RCB changes their jersey color to blue, then they can win IPL. This is on a lighter note. But yeah, I think this is something which is very interesting. So guys, let's do one more topic here. Just I want to see your thoughts here. Let's take the next abstract topic which can be asked to you in your interviews. So the topic is walls are dead. So what would you interpret, guys? Like I want you guys to type it in the chat box. What would you start off, or maybe how would you structure your thoughts if this is the topic given to you? Walls are dead. Again, this was a topic which was given to one of my friends, by the way. Trees killing for buildings. Okay. The world is opening. Globalization. There is no scope for boundaries. One family, all of us living together. No boundaries. Sky is the limit. Okay. Manraj, if you would have been there, so how would you tackle this?
So I mean, I had some of those thoughts in the chat box, but there's another thing which I think about. So we have this saying in the corporate world that this is a closed door meeting, and at home we say that this stays within the bounds of our walls. In Hindi we say चार दीवारी के बीच में ये बातें हुई है, right? In Hindi. So I think I would correlate walls to privacy. So if walls are down or walls are dead means that there's no privacy, and anything we say, anything we think, Meta, your Facebook, Apple, Google, they can probably hear you, right? So there's this
Hmm.
insane quote by James Franco. He said, and it reads like this: My wife asked me that why was I speaking so softly in the house. I replied saying I was worried Mark Zuckerberg is listening to me. She laughed, Alexa laughed, Siri laughed.
That's a good one.
The
So I
walls,
think,
the walls are
yeah,
down. I mean, for me, it's like my privacy. In the digital era, there's limited amount of privacy. I would probably say that.
right. No, that's a very good one, by the way. Now we get to know how did you get into ISB because you had answers to these questions on your like in your mind itself. But yeah, I think even in the chat box, a lot of good points have come. So walls resulting in nuclear family, no foundation, people within walls in a room looking into phone, social media is killing peace. So a lot of good interpretations are there. So cool. And lastly, like let's take one more instance because this is very interesting. The next topic for all of you guys is zero, zero. So zero is the topic which is given to you in a group discussion. What would you guys interpret it, and what would you start off your GD with? Okay, Arya Bhatta, Shruti saying, yeah, whatever. Flop Shah Rukh Khan movie. Zero is the beginning of everything, starts with zero. Okay, starting from scratch. Okay, see, starting from scratch and new start, I think this would be very common in the sense that everyone would talk about this. Something, let's say, unique or something interesting. Zero capital, zero have value, India invented. Zero is helpful only if it is on the right. Wow, that's a good one, better than negative. Manoj, if you would have been there, so what would you talk on?
I think new beginnings is one good topic, but
Hmm.
I would also probably think a little more philosophical. I mean, I am thinking that you reap the benefits of what you sow, right? So, for example, zero is a number. If multiplied by any number, results in a zero, right? So the energy you emit is the energy you attract, and like-minded people, like birds of the same feather flock together. So association is extremely important. If you want to become, let's say, an entrepreneur, you will associate yourself with other entrepreneurs. If you want to be a sportsman, you will start waking up early and go to the tracks. So I think being with the right people of the right mindset will help you achieve your goals. So I think zero gives
Hmm.
us that, in a mathematical form, and in life, association gives us that. So I
Right,
would start with that.
right. Got it. Very, very interesting. We've also got interesting answers in the chat box. People are comparing it to zero da. So that is something which we've got. But yeah, very interesting. So guys, again, like the point of this was that these kind of topics might be given to you. So don't hesitate or don't panic at all. And this is something which is very, very critical for you to just ensure that you are not panicking, you are not like becoming nervous just because the topic is very abstract. Just be prepared and trust me, एक कोई ना कोई बंदा या बंदी होगा जो चालू कर देगा GD, and you just have to hop on and add your thoughts. So like the best way to like counter a GD is by that itself. So I think that's about the group discussion part. Let's move on to the personal interviews. So quickly, Manoj, if you can guide everyone about some of the do's and don'ts of personal interviews with your
Right.
interview experiences at so many companies. So that'll be super helpful. And then I can add on my thoughts as well.
Sounds good. I think again, what I would say is One is the fundamentals, guys. So that's extremely important, right? The do's and don'ts. And then I would probably want to introduce the audience to a small framework which can guide them on how to structure their thoughts and deliver. When it comes to absolute do's and don'ts, I think one, dress to the occasion, right? Not the job that you have, but the job that you want. So the job that you have could be of a student, right? So your current job is as a student, but the job you want could be an analyst, an associate, a trader, a research person, right? So please dress for the occasion. That's extremely important, right? It exudes a certain amount of energy, and it shows that you're serious, right? You're willing to put in the effort. Second, I think smile and ask, right? So there's this saying which I really think, which I really like, is that if you don't ask, it's always a no, and you miss 100% of the shots that you do not take. So I think it's very important to ask. It could be as basic as asking for directions. That, hi, I'm new. Can you help me with directions to the VP's building? I'm interviewing with them today. Hi, I'm sorry, I'm not able to find my way. I'm sorry, I don't have the answer to this. Can you allow me a minute to think about it? I am not the best with calculations. Is it okay? Can I use a calculator? Could I borrow a paper and pen, please? Am I allowed to take a minute to think about this? Can I gather my thoughts? It's important to smile and ask. And I think more often than not, if you smile and if you ask and your ask is genuine, I don't think anybody will say a no, not just in an interview, but in general in life. I think that's how humans are wired. I think third, learn something about your interviewer if that's a possibility. If not, learn something about the panel that you're a part of, or if not even that, learn something about the company, right? It shows that you're interested, you're keen, you're willing to put in the effort. And this is just not, you're not shooting a shot in the dark. You've prepped, and this is something that you wanted, right? So I think that becomes important. Uh, Probably extend your hand first to shake theirs. Do it firmly yet gently. Smile. Be exuberant warmth. I think people like people, who exuberate warmth. So I think that's extremely important for you to do that. I think the framework is, I think, very akin to a GD, because I think even a personal interview is a group discussion. It's a group of two people discussing. So I'm going to borrow a lot of ideas from the framework of a group discussion. And I'm probably going to say step one is to listen. Again, it's very important to listen to what your interviewer is asking. The question he or she is posing to you is something which he or she fundamentally wants you to answer, either intellectually, philosophically, or mindset wise. These are the only three ways that they want to understand what you're thinking, right? So if I ask you a question on how many windows are there in the city of New Delhi, it may sound like an abstract question. This is an actual question that McKinsey, Bain, BCG asks in their interviews. How many windows are there in the city of New Delhi? They don't want the answer. They just want to see how you structure your thoughts. So it's important to listen to understand what the interviewer is asking. And coming to it, the second step is structuring. It's very important to structure your thoughts to identify that, what have you understood or analyzed from what the interviewers asked, and can you deliver on that? Third, the ability to zoom out and zoom in. Zoom out being macro, and zoom in means getting into the nitty gritties of it. So, can you present an overall bird's eye view, or do you want to present a worm's eye view, right? So, a 30,000 feet thinking or ground level reality. Neither is better than the other. I'm not saying that the big picture is better than the smaller picture, but it's important to understand the sanctity of the question and to understand the tonality of the interviewer as to what are they trying to gauge. I think you can use approximations and examples as a next step to, sort of accentuate what you're trying to say. So if I tell you that I was really good in sports and I played in three different leagues, I was part of the boys tennis squad. I represented India in under 14. I think these approximations, these examples will allow to, establish your credibility, that you're not just saying, I'm a hardworking guy, I am well spoken. I don't think these general statements will really help you. It's important to corroborate what you're saying, to authenticate yourself. And sometimes you may not have exact answers, so you can approximate. So when Kushal asked me, how many interviews have you given? I honestly don't know the answer. And even if I try to calculate, I probably cannot. But I can do a rough estimate that I probably interviewed with 20 to 25 companies. Average, I've done 3 to 4 rounds with each company. So that makes it 80 to 100 interviews. So it's okay to approximate. And that's the best way to, corroborate what you're saying. I think next is to quote your source. If you are not really sure, you can say that I think according to this, or according to my recent study based on that. Again, so establishing credibility on the data source that you are pointing at becomes extremely important. And I think as a last step in the framework, and I think, ladies and gentlemen, this is very important. is to, emote and enjoy. Emote is, using your gestures, your hand language, your body language, your smile. And I think it's important to enjoy because, you're investing your time in it. I think you have to fundamentally respect your time, your energy, your efforts, your resources. And if you're having a conversation, you need to enjoy it. I mean, needless to say, I am enjoying this conversation right now because, it's honestly a lot of fun to talk to Kushal, and it's honestly a privilege also to talk to Kushal. So I think it's important to identify that why are you in a room, why are you talking to someone, why are you in a group discussion, and once you do that, it's important to start having fun while you're doing it. So I think that's something that I would follow.
Perfect. Thanks for the detailed do's and don'ts once again for PI. Guys, quickly, so like adding on to what he said, right? There would be a lot of questions which would be asked to you about current affairs, or let's say something about what's happening in the Indian economy, or are you following the geopolitical news and all? So just make sure that you are following some good YouTube channels where you can get all these informations from. Some of the YouTube channels that I had followed were Study IQ, which is very, very useful. Like that channel is going to give you a lot of insights about everything, like literally everything about what's happening. Study IQ is one. Think School is one, of course. Think School talks about a lot of geopolitical videos. Dhruv Rathi is one channel where you can get to know about current affairs and all. So these three, four YouTube channels, if you just follow and just make sure that you are watching content of these channels, you will be updated with what's happening in the economy. So that is one. Second is basically you always need to ensure that you are in touch with what's happening in the ecosystem. In, let's say, if you want to get into finance, so you should be aware about which was the last mergers and acquisitions deal that has happened, or let's say what is the valuation of the deal, what was the transaction value, what was the swap ratio, what was the multiple on which that deal was done. So you need to be very well versed with all these things. And apart from that, I think there are certain newsletters or certain websites which I would recommend all of you to just read on a regular basis so that you are updated with what's happening in the startup ecosystem. If you want to get into startups, then yourstory.com is very good. Then apart from that, N Tracker is very good, and INC42 is very good. So these are like 3 4 websites which I can think of when it comes to staying updated with what's happening in the startup ecosystem and what's happening in current affairs and all of that. So this is something which will help all of you also to stay updated, and at the same time you will also ensure that you are staying updated and you are answering the questions with good thoughts. Matlab, it's very critical and it's very important that you will always have answer, at least like some answer or some topic. You'll have some thought on that particular topic. So for example, if let's say your interviewer is going to ask you about, okay, what is happening with the Lakshadweep versus Maldives controversy, you should at least have something to speak on, like let's say for 10 seconds or 30 seconds, at least a basic thoda idea bhi hoga. So you can just talk about those things which are happening in the economy. Like for example, I was asked about Yes Bank crisis. Although I did not know about the entire crisis which was there, but I knew about the basics, like what was the entire, like what was the broader problem which happened in the Yes Bank crisis thing. So I'll repeat the websites and channels, don't worry. So for startup, it's basically INC42, it is yourstory.com, and Ntracker, ENTRACKR. So Ntracker. So these are the three for startups newsletters. The Ken is also good, by the way, but again, that's a paid. These three were free. The Ken is going to be paid. And YouTube channels में Study IQ, Think School, and Dhruv Rathi. These three are the channels which will really help all of you to stay updated with what's happening in the economy. N tracker. Let me type it in the chat box so that you also have that understanding. So it is ENTRACKR. Okay, so N tracker. So this is the name of the website. So you can just go there, and all the startup related news would be there in that website itself. So I think that's about the resources which you can use to stay updated. This will help you a lot. And I think the next thing would be the mock interview. If Manraj, you have to take anything before that, let me know. But then otherwise, we can start the mock interview where I am going to be grilled a lot. So of course, I'm prepared for that.
No, no, I'll be kind to you, or I'll try to be kind to you.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm going
So
to try
yeah.
to make the most of this opportunity that, I'm getting to interview Kushal. So I don't know when last time, Kushal was interviewing, or when's the next time he'll interview. So I'm going to make the most of
Sure,
the opportunity.
sure. I know everyone would be excited, and I'm very nervous right now. So, guys, are you excited for this mock interview? I don't know. I mean, how I'm going to perform, but let's see. These are like some of the answers which you should also give when you are giving your interviews. Okay, we have only one yes. Okay, one person is excited for this interview. Okay. Oh wow, we have a lot of yeses. Now I'm confident. So cool. Thanks, guys, for boosting my confidence. Cool. I think you can start off. All set. I'm all set.
The students are also, looking forward at the end to sort of actually see your resume.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope the resume is good enough to attract them.
Absolutely.
Cool.
So great. All right, we'll just get started.
Sure.
Hi, Kushal. Good evening. Thank you for
Just
taking.
sorry, Manoj, just sorry to interrupt you, but can you just explain the scenario to them, like which company is this, and all of that?
Right, right, sure. So, the company is Aditya Birla, the Aditya Birla Group, and this is their finance leadership program for
Cool.
which you're interviewing, right?
Perfect. Perfect. Uh,
Hi, Kushal. Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to interview with us.
Hi, Manoj. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. I'm very excited to give this interview.
Great. And how was your day today?
It was amazing. It was very productive, and I had an amazing time brainstorming on a few ideas with some of my friends. And hope your day has been going well as well.
It is, and I think there's nothing better that I would probably do on a Saturday evening than to scout for talent for our leadership program here at Aditya Birla. So we're very excited to be in conversation with people like you.
Thank you so much. Means a lot.
Great. So, Kushal, why don't we get started? And if you could just quickly introduce yourself.
Sure. So I am Kushal. I am a qualified chartered accountant in November 2019. I got all India ranks in all the three levels of CA exams. All India rank 6 in the entrance, 5 in inter, 5 in finals. I have done my articleship from a mid-sized firm named Gokhale and Sate. Primarily, I was involved in the statutory audit and concurrent audit departments. However, I have also rotated my departments and I have worked in indirect taxation and direct tax assessment and litigation. Apart from my articleship experience, I have also anchored the National Conference for CA students, which happened in January 2020, where there were 3,200 plus attendees, and I was the lead anchor for that entire event. So I'm very passionate about public speaking, and I'm very passionate about presentations as well. I am interested in reading a lot of books related to startup investing. And apart from that, I am also an avid reader and consumer of content on current affairs.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction. And it was lovely getting to know about you. But you mentioned somewhere that you had a rank 6 in your foundation and then 5 in your IPCC and 5 in your finals. I mean, first of all, heartiest congratulations for that. It's an absolutely big accolade to be an all India ranker. But
Thank you. Thank you so much.
that also begs the question that why would you want to be with a conglomerate when you can actually be interviewing with a McKinsey or a Bain, or you could be a strategy consultant with a leading bank like Citibank or JP Morgan. So why would you want to not pick that over this?
Sure. Thank you so much for asking that question. I think that I would want an overall exposure of a stint at various types of companies, in the sense that Aditya Birla Group has companies in the cement sector, which is Ultratech Cement. You have a company in the aluminium sector, which is Hindalco. There's a company in the NBFC space, which is the financial services space that I love the most, which is Aditya Birla Capital. And even I have heard that there are central functions which are there in Aditya Birla Group, which includes functions like corporate finance, corporate economic cell, central cell, where a lot of exposure is given to all the qualified chartered accountants. So having said this, I would not want myself to just have an experience or exposure of one particular department. I am very much ready and passionate to like to just involve myself in all the different stints which you provide in the flagship finance leadership program. And these three stints of 4 months each that you are going to offer me in the first year would definitely allow me to understand about the different areas of operations and different functions of a department in, let's say, marketing, operations, sales, and finance. That will help me in order to groom my entire personality. And going forward, you are giving the discretion for us to select which stint we want to stay in for the rest of our career, which is again a very positive point for us, so that we can also understand and experiment where our interest lies in. So that's one of the main reasons, and I am very much excited to work with a company like yours, where an overall exposure is going to be given rather than just a strategy role where I would be given to advice to a particular department.
Wow, excellent. I think I love the granularity with which, one, you've done your research on the group. And second, I appreciate the school of thought, the clarity that you have, the vision that you've come. And this is something which we appreciate. We want our candidates to know that, what is it that they want to do? Where do they want to go next? So that's phenomenal. Thank you for that answer. I think I want to get down to a little bit of technicality. I think I fundamentally understand about your background, and I understood that you want to be here for a few number of reasons, which you rightly mentioned. So if I were to ask you a technical question, let's say that I have two companies. The PE of one is 18, and the other one is 20. They're both in the same industry, same kind of product lines. And if you as an investor had to choose one, which one would you pick, and why would you do that?
Got it. I just wanted to ask one question. Can I ask a question before I answer?
Oh, please.
So I wanted to understand, are the revenue numbers and profit numbers also the same in for both the companies?
Yes.
Got it. So in my understanding, I feel that since both the companies are in the same industry and both the revenue numbers as well as the profit numbers are similar, the company which is trading at a P multiple of 18 is undervalued in my opinion, in the sense that this stock has a potential to go up to 20, which is the other stock. So I feel that if everything is same about both the stocks, I would invest in a stock trading at a P multiple of 18, because this is undervalued as of now, and the chances of this stock going to 20 are higher, and I can make good amount of return by investing in a stock which is trading at a P multiple of 18.
That's actually the exact explanation that I look for in the answer. So thank you, Kushal, for that. And just to sort of digress a little bit, but to continue the technicality of questions, uh, a company which is not listed on the stock exchange and is privately held, how would you calculate its valuation, in your opinion?
Got it. So these would include any startups as well, right? Private limited companies. Got it. So I think, in my opinion, if a company is not listed in a stock market, I would go down with two approaches. One would be transaction comparables. By that, what I mean is that if there is a similar company in the space which is listed on the stock exchange, I would see at what multiple of their profits or revenues these companies are trading at, and I would apply a similar multiple, taking an average of the industry, to the startup or the private limited company. That is one. However, if there is no listed comparable in the space, if there is no comparable which is listed in the stock markets, I would see what was the valuation of private companies in this same space itself, and what was the multiple that they raised their previous round on. So for example, if I take example of a company like Zepto, which is in quick commerce, I would see what is the valuation of his of the substitute of the competition of Zepto, which is Blinkit, and then I would just see what was the valuation of Blinkit in the last round. I would apply that multiple to the Zepto's revenue or profitability. Assuming that these startups would be loss making, I would do a price to revenue multiple and not price to earnings multiple, because most of the startups are loss making.
Right.
And the revenue multiple would then be adjusted to Zepto itself, taking in account the factors which are there into consideration. The second method of valuing these private companies would be using a discounted cash flow technique, where I would project the revenues for the potential foreseeable future and discount them at a relevant interest rate, which is the weighted average cost of capital, to calculate the fair value of the startup. This would include a lot of assumptions, and honestly, this wouldn't be very relevant for an early stage startup. But if it is a late stage startup which has raised more than 5 to 6 rounds of funding, I can fairly estimate their future earnings basis the previous financial data that I will have. So these are the two methods that I would do, and these would be the ways of valuing the startups.
Great, Kushal. I think you've covered both a textbook definition of how you would value, as well as you've given a holistic example of companies. And I really like the word. What did you call Zepto? Is in which industry? Quick
Quick
commerce.
commerce. Yeah.
That's an excellent term. It's a very niche, evolving industry, and people still call it e-commerce. I'm glad that you could use that example and you use that terminology. So fantastic. I think last two questions. I think I'm good with the technical RAM. I just wanted to sort of talk about sometimes how demanding this program can get, and a lot of you and your colleagues in this program, if you choose to join, may have to work late nights on certain occasions. So do you think you will be able to cope up with that pressure, and are you willing to do that?
Yes, Manraj. So I would give you an example. So when I was doing my articleship, we had a deadline of filing the income tax returns. So filing income tax returns has a deadline of 31st July for all the individual clients.
Right.
And there were 10 clients whose returns was pending to be filed on 31st of July itself. And I ensured that I am staying back late till 11:30 p.m. in the office and ensuring that all the returns are filed on the same day, because we did not want our clients to face penalties. The
Right.
reason I'm giving you this example is because I want to say that when the deadlines are there, when there is pressure of finishing work under a particular timeline, I would make sure that I am prioritizing work over any other thing. And I also understand the importance of ensuring that the tasks are finished in a given timeline. So the timeline, if that can be met in consensus when we decide the project, I would be more than happy to stay for longer hours and ensure that the task is done within the given timeline. And even if it asks me to, let's say, stay for longer hours after my office working hours as well, I would definitely prioritize my work over any other thing. But I would sincerely request, if the task is done, then I would prioritize academics after a point in time, where I would also need to focus on my other examinations after a point in time. So that is something which would be a sincere request from my end. But again, having said this, I would be more than happy to work for longer hours.
Great, Kushal. I mean, that gives us a lot of, happiness to know that you're willing to put in the effort. And I also appreciate your candor and, coming forth and telling us that you would want to prioritize your academics. So thank you very much for the candor and honesty. I think I'm good. And thank you so much for, taking the time to do this. Do you have any questions for us?
Yes, Manraj, I had a couple of questions. One was, I wanted to understand, how does a typical day in a life of an analyst look like if he is supposed to join Aditya Birla Group's finance leadership program? And secondly, how does the growth prospect look like for me if I join your organization?
Sure. So I'm gonna answer them in tandem, one after the other. I think so. I'm gonna take the second one first. That what are your growth prospects and how do you sort of like you rightly mentioned, there are multiple divisions. There's Hindalco, there's a finance division, there's a consumer products division, and there's a lot of fungibility and flexibility that's offered to you to rotate between these divisions. As part of the program, you'll be spending the first year 4 months in one division, and then you move on to the other one. So I think you get a very cross-cultural exposure. You get to collaborate with different teams. You also work with the central strategy team to understand the mandate of the larger organization, which flows from the board of directors. So it puts your thoughts and actions in tandem with the company's vision. So you also learn how to be an entrepreneur and how do you run the company, not just the work or the domain that you're working in. So I think that's step one in understanding the fungibility of this program and the flexibility you get. I mean, I hope this answers. And coming to your first question now, that what kind of growth prospects do you get? I think we want to really invest in you for the first year so that you get a cross-cultural exposure. You get to collaborate with different agents of the organization, work in different divisions. And as an analyst, you sort of do the grunt work. So it's a bottoms-up approach, right? So you do the analysis and you sort of present your analysis to the management, but you are also aware of what the management wants because you're centrally reporting into this program's leadership team. So it helps you to sort of combine your intelligence and the delivery vision of the team to deliver in tandem with what the company really wants. And once you finish the program, you choose your division and the role in which you want to grow. So there's immense opportunities for you to grow within the company in the same division or in different parts of the company in different divisions. So I hope that
Got
answers.
it. Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much for the answer. And I look forward to hearing about the candidature from you.
Thank you, Kushal. We appreciate your time and interest in our organization. Please allow us a few days to get back, and I hope you enjoy your Sunday tomorrow. Thanks again for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Perfect. So, guys, yeah, that was the mock interview. Manraj, any feedback? Firstly, you go ahead.
So
So, you tell me what was the feedback? Good things, bad things, guys. Again, I had not prepared any answer as such. So, Manraj, you can tell everyone what was the pros, like what was the good and bad things, and of course, what can be done better in these kind of interviews.
I think first things first, even before, and yeah, I think Aman rightly said feedback is extremely important. And learning how to give feedback is also something, which I remember you were teaching last week in your module of GDPI. So I think that's something which I'm sure your students are excited about. How do you give candid feedback, which is valuable? So I
Yeah.
watch your recording sometimes to learn how to give feedback. So anyway, coming back to the topic at hand. I think first of all, you maintain your demeanor and your persona as a very calm, composed, and confident person. And a question that I suddenly asked you in the middle. There are two companies, with a PE of 18 and 20. And I knew that a lot of people will say PE 18 is better, because it's intuitive. That same industry, you will say 18. There's room for growth. But you asked me a question that are the revenues and the profits also same? So you went one step deeper, but I realized that you took a pause before you asked me that because you gathered your thoughts, you structured them, and there's something called as data sufficiency when we write the GMAT, in which we don't have to solve anything. The question is this data sufficient to solve this problem? And the answer is yes or no, as opposed to actually solving the problem. It's an actual segment in the GMAT in mathematics. So I think you followed a consultant's model of data sufficiency to understand if you can solve that. Coming to the behavioral questions, I think you were spot on. You understood that, what is it that you want? Why have you applied to Aditya Birla Group? I tried to, demotivate you by telling you that, there's McKinsey. And, without really saying, I tried saying that, oh, McKinsey, Bain, BCG are better. And you know that you're a ranker. So you can either pick that or you can pick us. So why are you picking us? I think you had that clarity of vision. You were able to coherently deliver and you were able to structure and understand that, okay, these are the reasons why I want to be here. So I think that vision is extremely important when students go to interview after their CA or even for their articleship, that, understanding that why are they there? You knew about the organization. You mentioned some divisions like Hindalco, right? ABFRL. You mentioned so many divisions. I think again, going back to, doing your homework, understanding a little bit about your interviewer or the panel or the company, that goes a long way. So I think you gain brownie points throughout. And lastly, when I asked you that, are you willing to stretch and work long hours? Not only did you give me an example to corroborate your stance, you solidified on your argument and you established yourself as a leader. You also mentioned that, once business is taken care of, I would like some time to study, like progress in my academics, which tells me that one, you're an honest individual and you're not willing to speak your heart out, right? You're not willing to, you have the courage to be honest. So tomorrow, if there's an ethical dilemma in the company, you are somebody who would come forward. You are somebody I can trust. You are somebody I can rely on. Plus, you are hardworking. So you established yourself as a natural leader. And lastly, you asked fundamentally extremely important questions. I think that, what are my growth opportunities outside my division? And second, as an analyst, how does my role grow and how will Aditya Birla grew me in this role? So I think it's fundamentally very important to ask that, what are you asking? Why are you asking? What's the sanctity of asking that? So I think overall excellent, like phenomenal. One of the finest interviews I have experienced in my personal journey of, interviewing candidates. So kudos to you for sure.
No, means a lot, means a lot. But anything specific, like even Khushbu is asking a question like, she's asking, are the interviewers actually polite like Manuraj and appreciative of all the answers? But she's asking, this is very important. It would be great if you could show how to handle a question
So
where you don't know an answer to. So, what would you advise there?
right.
Like, how do you handle that?
Sure. So I think what Khushbu is saying is also a valid point. So Khushbu, to answer your question, there are different kinds of rounds, and what you're talking about is called as stress rounds, which probably may not be relevant to articles or even CA final students. But stress rounds usually happen to IITians when they interview for technical positions. That, you're given a stress round that can you explain a database to a 9-year-old student, and they put you in a stressful situation just to test your thought process, or how will you manage pressure. You know, but for a role which is more about leadership, such as the Aditya Birla's finance leadership program, the interviewer is generally very kind, warm, and welcoming. And the similar principle applies to even MBAs. But there will be situations when you may not have answers. And I think somebody else asked that in the chat, that what if you don't know the answers? Of course, I was interviewing Kushal, and it's unlikely that I can ask Kushal probably the distance between Bombay and the moon, and he'll still guesstimate and give me an answer. That's
No, I
hardly
won't be able to do that.
I'm sure you will be. Having said that, if you're in a situation when you don't know the answer to a question, I think it's important to maintain your composure. It's important to maintain your demeanor, and it's okay to try to guesstimate. Guesstimate is guessing and arriving at an estimate, which is an educated guess. How do you do that? You try to break down the problem. What is it that the interviewer is trying to ask? You go back to listening. If you need additional resources, you ask for them. Could I have a paper and pen, please? Can I use a calculator? Can you give me a minute to think about it? I think it's important to ask those questions. And even after borrowing these resources, you're not able to answer. I think it's okay to say that I am not fundamentally aware of this concept. My apologies. I think you say that and you stop, and the interviewer will acknowledge that you have the courage to say the truth and to accept and acknowledge that you do not know the answer to it. So I think that's fundamentally very important. You
Yeah.
probably cannot know everything, and it's okay to not know everything.
Just to add on to this, Khushbu, right? Like, it's very important to be honest here. Like, for example, even if you are given a question where you don't know the answer to absolutely, like you are asked something like Russia-Ukraine war, and you have absolutely no idea what is happening with the Russia-Ukraine war, you just tell them that I'm so sorry, sir. I absolutely, like, I have like, I don't know the answer to this question. But having said this, I definitely go back and I'll definitely try to read about what's happening with the Russia-Ukraine war and keep myself updated, which will be appreciated. You don't have to just tell them that you don't have to keep bluffing. Otherwise, the more you keep lying, the more they'll grill you down and they'll get to know that this candidate is just like bluffing and they are not being very honest. So being honest is something which is very, very important in my opinion. And that is something which every recruiter is going to test. So not everyone knows everything. There are some points that you might know, the interviewer wouldn't know. There are some points that interviewer might know and you wouldn't know. So it's absolutely fine to be honest over there. So that is something which is very, very critical. And lastly, I think we'll take one of the questions. Of course, we have to take all the questions towards the end of the session. This is something which is important about the salary negotiation. So, although we posted one video on LinkedIn about the salary negotiation part, where in our previous career accelerator program batch, we just taught students how to do salary negotiation. But Manraj, do you want to throw some light? Puneet is asking, I would love it if you could also do a mock for the salary negotiation. But would you want to throw some light on how would you tackle that?
Sure. So, Kushal, are you willing to make an offer to me, and then we can negotiate from there? We can get into a mock scenario.
Okay, sure. So basically, I am the interviewer. I am interviewing you, right?
Correct.
And so I am asking you about the salary question, right?
Let's say you can make up a role, something in IB, corporate, whatever you want to make up, and then
Okay.
just define the scenario so that the students understand.
Sure. So I am interviewing Manuraj for JP Morgan Investment Banking Division. And then here I am asking him a question on what are your salary expectations. Does that work? Cool, perfect. So let's start off. So Manuraj, what would be your salary expectations from this profile?
I think, firstly, JP Morgan's always been my dream organization. So if it were up to me, I would probably not negotiate on salary at all. Having said that, I expect an organization like JP Morgan to be commensurate and pay with the best industry standards. And I think the values and the virtues that I bring to the table are in alignment with, a top performance candidature. So I expect that to be in alignment with that.
Could you help us understand with a broad range or broad number that you have in your mind?
I would appreciate if you could make an offer. I'm happy to counter that.
So what if we give you an offer of 5 lakhs per annum? That's it. Would you be okay with that?
Honestly, I think you're joking with me. So, and I appreciate the humor. But having said that, in my previous role, I was already making 12 lakh rupees for the analyst position. And here I'm applying for an analyst too, which is a precursor to the associate position. And the only reason I'm not waiting out for a promotion at my current organization is because JP Morgan is a leader in the investment banking space, not just in North America, but across the globe. EMEA, South America, APAC, and I would really love to work in that cross cultural in different geographies, different segments, different sectors, and I would really get a rich exposure, which is why I'm willing to take a hit, but not this much. I would really appreciate if you could anchor your offer again and consider something around 14 lakh rupees, please.
Got it, sure. So we'll think internally once and we'll let you know if that offer can be matched.
I appreciate that, and I look forward to hearing from you an affirmation.
Sure. Cool, guys. So I think this was this was about the offer. So Manuraj, anything you want to add here?
No, makes sense. I think you caught me off guard by saying 5 lakhs, right? So you said analyst position, so I thought you'll say at least 8 lakhs or 9 lakhs, and then 5 lakhs, and then you said JP Morgan investment banking. So I think you were trying to put me in stress, which I think somebody in the chat had already mentioned that let me put him in stress and see how he responds. So I tried to smile and I try to tell you that you're trying to add humor. So I made you also comfortable instead of getting bogged down and then getting jittery that, oh, what do I do now? And I think you realize that okay, he's not getting bogged down, he's being calm, he's maintaining his demeanor. So you tried to consider my offer again. I also justified that, why do I deserve more than 12 lakh rupees? And I mean, initially I asked for 15, but I brought it down to 14 because again, I don't want to sound like I'm not willing to budge at all. So I think that's very important that you're willing to move the needle, but you're also willing to accept the offer for a broader cause, the brand and the culture and the company. So
Right. No, absolutely. And in fact, like just one feedback for everyone here. So if you would have noticed, right? So I intentionally put him on stress and I mentioned 5 lakhs per annum because I wanted to see how would he tackle that scenario. Because like the interviewer can just put you at any spot. So you need to ensure that you are not panicking or you're not like becoming blank at that point in time. For example, a lot of people, when we tell them that, okay, this is the salary which will be given to you. And let's say if the recruiter like just jokingly mentions 4 lakhs, 5 lakhs, you will be just speechless over there. So you don't have to be speechless or numb at that point in time. You have to just answer, okay, I know like this is on a lighter note, or I assume this is on a lighter note, but this is something which I would expect or something of that sort. So again, like this is something which would be helpful for all of you. I think before we get onto the resume thing, right? So of course, like resume thing, I'm going to teach you about how do you properly format your resume and the CAR concept, which is context, action, and result. I'll just quickly share my screen, and I wanted to like just quickly tell you about the Career Accelerator program as well, where Manuraj is also going to be there, and he's going to teach you about group discussions, resume building, mock interviews. Like he seems to be an expert, and I am learning every day from him after staying with him. So this is for everyone who has cleared their CA exams. And here basically we are giving a 5 weekend program, which is like divided across 5 weekends, where we are going to teach everything on resume building, group discussions, mock interviews, building personal brand on LinkedIn, where I'm going to teach you how to build your personal brand, how do you reach out to HRs, how do you create content on LinkedIn, and how do you ensure that the engagement is increased as well. Manuraj is going to take on resume building GD and PI, and trust me, he's got an amazing feedback from all the previous students of Career Accelerator program on GDPI. So he's going to help all of you in that aspect, and of course, personalized attention is going to be given to everyone. Weekend 2 is advanced Excel, where we are going to teach you everything about functions like pivot tables, power queries, flash fills, VBA macros, which are used in our day-to-day lives in MS Excel. Financial modeling is a skill which, according to me, is very crucial and important, where you would be asked in any of your interviews to build a model assignment, and just ask, like interviewers can ask you to value that company. So that is something which is very important. Weekend 4 is by Ishita Singh, who's again a graduate from ISB and is working at Accenture. She's going to teach on management consulting, case interview preparation. So how do you structure a problem? How do you, let's say, estimate the number of Uber rides in Bombay in a day, or estimate the number of burgers sold by McDonald's in a day, or estimate the number of windows in India? So any random topic can be given to you. There is no right or wrong answers to these questions. What is more important is the structure and way of thinking to these solutions. And last weekend would be on reading annual reports, investor presentations, and con call transcripts, and how to present PPT to your bosses, by David Pinto, who is working at ITC Infotech, and Sharad Malpani, who is an ex BCG alum, and he is now working in a startup. So this is something which we have for all of you. Apart from that, we are going to give all of you one mentor who is working in all these renowned companies, who will spend 30 minutes with all of you every week. And apart from that, we'll give you placement assistance as well, and make sure that we give your resumes and refer you to the organizations where you would want to get into ultimately. That is something which I am going to leverage my personal network. And this is something which is starting from 27th of January. This is a weekend batch, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Saturday, Sunday. And there are companies like other companies which are charging around 1 lakh 18,000 plus GST, 3 lakh 30,000 plus GST for similar products. We have priced it at 25,000 plus GST. Having said this, we are giving scholarships of 20% to people who have cleared their CA finals with All India rank, or they are doing articleship from Big Four or industrial training, or they have got their ranks, All India ranks in CA Foundation or CA Intermediate. So if you are in this category, of course, like you can apply for this, and you can also apply for scholarship, and we'll be more than happy to give you a 20% scholarship. The recordings will also be available to all of you. This is happening online on Zoom, and this is something which will teach you how to improve your communication skills, and of course how to improve your financial modeling, consulting, and advanced Excel skills as well. So if you are interested, please enroll for this Career Accelerator program. And of course, I'll ask Kamana from my team to paste the link in the chat box. And if you have any questions, please type them in the chat box. And Manuraj, if you have anything to add here, happy to have you as well. And then we can proceed with the resume building session.
No, I think this is a great opportunity, and I think after the massive success of CAP1, and the feedback that you garnered on what your students had to say, everyone is probably excited about what they can learn from this program, and especially the new modules that you've introduced, the old modules plus the newer ones, where you're going to give personalized attention to every student, and they will have access to mentors and trainers, GDPI, personal branding, resume building. I think that's just the cherry on the cake. So I think it's a very exciting opportunity for the entire CA fraternity.
Right. Thanks a lot for that. So guys, if any one of you are interested, again, like feel free to enroll for this. And we are going to interview you, and it's like this is going to be a small batch, and we are going to ensure that quality candidates come in, so you guys can build on your network and community as well. So I think that is something which I thought I'll mention it. And moving forward to the resume building session, let me share my resume and tell you what is like a good format of resume you should create for. So I'll just share my screen. So you guys can just have a look at the resumes that I'm going to show you here. So again, like I had made a lot of mistakes, guys, by the way, in terms of making a very bad resume. Like always ensure that you are following a tabular format, where you are mentioning your professional and academic credentials in the first table. you are mentioning the work experience later on, and then you are mentioning about the positions of responsibility or awards, achievements, and skills. So this is the best way to divide your resume in. And this I'll be sharing this Word document and format with all of you on the WhatsApp group. If you're not a part of WhatsApp group, please join the WhatsApp group by clicking on the link which Manav will send in the chat box in the next couple of minutes. Manav, I'll request you to send the WhatsApp group link, and this would be shared on WhatsApp group as well as email to all of you. So it's very important to keep it in a very tabular format. And what is more important is that the work experience section, how do you write that? That is something which is going to be very important. Always ensure that you are starting every bullet point in the resume using an action verb. What does action verb mean? Engaged in, assisted in, scrutinized, executed, involved in handling statutory audit. All these are action verbs where, let's say, you are using a verb to start a sentence. You should never use a noun or you should never use an adverb whenever you are starting a work experience section. And secondly, what is more important is that whenever you're writing something, right, always ensure you are quantifying. So for example, if let's say you are saying you conducted auditions of masters of ceremonies, you are mentioning the scale of the conference. Let's say if you have organized a cultural event, you are mentioning a scale of how many people attended that event. If you have just got some let's say you want to talk about a committee where you are a part of that organization, you just mention that okay, this committee was established in 1949, it has more than 10,000 members. Quantifying is very, very important. Let me show you one of my friend's resume also. This is a sample resume. Now let me explain you CAR format, right? CAR is basically context, action, and result. So this is something which is very critical. So what is the context? Basically, context is simple, that you have to write what exactly you are going to do, what is the problem over there. Context can also be replaced by challenge. What is the challenge? The challenge here was current account transformation for the largest public sector bank. And then, like the person has mentioned in the resume, that what was the result? Growth in NTB acquisitions by 110% month on month. Business per employee increased by 10% over 12 months. So this is the, basically this is the impact, which is the result. And then he has mentioned about the action in the bullet points. So if you see, these are the actions, and this is something which is very, very crucial whenever you are making a resume. So this is called as the CAR framework, which is context, action, and result, where you mention a context, then you mention the action, and then you mention the result. So here he has started with result, which is like result is something which is to be mentioned first. Then he has mentioned the action, what is the action which was taken, and the context is basically given in the form of a heading here towards the left side. So always try to ensure that you are making a resume in this format, and this is something which would be very, very useful for all of you if you apply in any companies. Secondly, whenever you are applying your resumes, right, always ensure that you are using a very, very professional format, and you are ensuring that you don't give any redundant information. So giving information like, let's say you write, I am good in oral and written communication skills, that is something which is not expected at all. Because if you write good in oral and written communication skills, there is no value which you are giving to the recruiter. I can also write, you can also write, all the 200 people who are attending this can also write, but it is not giving any value. So make sure that you are not writing redundant things. Always try to ask yourself, अगर मैंने ये चीज लिखी है resume में, can I flaunt or can I just like, can I be proud of this thing? If I can flaunt it, then I should add it in my resume. This is something which you should definitely do. And secondly, I feel that what is more important is you need to ensure that you are writing on your resume about the all the achievements and quantifying them as well. If you have done a statutory audit of a client, of course don't mention the name of the client. At the same time, mention the turnover or the market cap of the company, because the recruiter would then understand what is the scale of audit that you are doing. So that is something which is very, very critical. These are some of the pointers which you should keep in resume building, and never add a photograph. That is not recommended, because photographs, again, it is redundant information. Like, recruiters are not going to hire you basis on how good you look. They are going to hire you on the basis of your resume in terms of what work you have done and how well you can work in the organization. So that is something which is very, very critical, and this is something which you should mention in your resume. So that's about the resume part. Manraj, if you want to add anything specific, over to you, because you're going to teach resume building in the Career Accelerator program as well. And then
So
I can take in the conclusion part, where I can answer the questions of the audience.
I think what you've covered the basics. I think fundamentals again. We always start with the fundamental, getting into the format, the technicality of it, the framework of building a resume. How do you target the psychology of who's reading your resume? How do you captivate someone's attention? So when people ask me that, Manuraj, how much time do you spend on a resume while making a hiring decision? I would say I probably spend 40 seconds or less than that to review a resume. And then somebody will ask me in 40 seconds, how do you capture the information that's written? But that's something which I think this module will teach the students, that how do you write something so that in 40 seconds somebody can understand that, okay, this makes you stand out. This is the formatting. This is the entire framework. I think CAR is one of the most fundamental frameworks that any student, especially in the finance fraternity, can use to capture the attention of the interviewer or of the person who's reviewing the resume. Then again, small fundamentals like, somebody was asking in the chat, do we need to put our photo? Do we need to write our address? Our contact details. Again, these are things which will be covered in the module, and it'll really help students in understanding that, how do they position themselves. So I think it's a good starting point.
Got it. And I think there's one question in the chat box. If you can also help them answer, dressing like tie or not. Do you wear a tie in your interviews? What's your advice on that?
I mean, truth be told, I personally have never worn a tie in my interview. Probably not even once. I think the only time was when I was interviewing for my undergraduate university. This was Christ University back in 2013. But besides that, for any job interview, I have personally never worn a tie. But it depends. Like if you are probably, wearing a suit jacket, you might want to wear a tie, which complements what you're wearing. I think a lot of people ask the color. I think I would say a plain white shirt does the job. If you're wearing a blazer jacket or a suit jacket, I think gray color or turquoise blue, not turquoise, the navy blue color. And then again, your trousers need to be either black, gray, or navy color. I think these are three fundamental colors which you can wear. Shirt, either sky blue or white, ideally white. And by white, I don't mean off white. It has to be crisp white and probably an Oxford collar shirt. So if you can, Google what Oxford collar is, or any store, if you go to, any store where you tell them I want an Oxford collar. So always wear an Oxford collar, not an eagle collar. So that is something which you should keep in mind. And tie is not a must per se, but if you are wearing a tie, make sure you're wearing a blazer jacket. Don't just wear a tie if you're not wearing a blazer jacket. Otherwise, a crisp shirt and trousers, Oxford collars, and Oxford shoes are good. They're like fundamentally sound. So yeah, I think that's my
Got
opinion.
it. No, perfect. That helps a lot. And I think just to answer a few questions in the chat box as well. So should it be restricted to one page? So Nisha, I think yeah, like of course it should be restricted to one page. Because see, the thing is that these recruiters get a lot of resumes, and if you are going to spill information over two, three, 4 pages, they don't firstly have the time to read two, three, 4 pages, and secondly, it's not recommended also to just keep your resume in 2 or 3 or 4 pages. So it's very important that you restrict it to one page itself. In no case it should spill beyond one page. That is absolutely not recommended. So that is about resume. And apart from that, I think what is more important in the resume is that also it's not necessary to mention any other redundant thing. Like a lot of people ask me languages, वगैरह mention करना है क्या? So it's not necessary to mention the languages part and all. And of course, like for more granular details, we are also going to cover this module in the Career Accelerator program second batch, where Manoj is going to review each and every resume, give personal feedback to all the students, and that is something which, of course, like we are going to do as a part of the soft skills activity as well in the Career Accelerator program. So I think that is about the session today. If you have any other questions, and if you want to ask anything, feel free to type them in the chat box. In the next couple of minutes, we'll take the questions. And of course, looking forward to having you in the Career Accelerator program as well. And before I take the questions, if you liked the session today, guys, of course, feel free to share it on LinkedIn. And of course, do tag us as well, which will help us in order to spread the awareness about these sessions as well, so that we would also be like benefited. And of course, like we'll also get some help from you guys. So that'll be very kind and very sweet of you guys if you like the session. So I think there's one question. What about hobbies? So Shashi, I think hobbies is again like not mandatory. If you are able to fill your resume without adding hobbies, like if you write, let's say writing, dancing, singing, unless you are a like national level or let's say state level athlete or state level player or in some of these activities, then it makes sense to write the hobbies part in. And you don't need to write in hobbies. You need to write in the extracurricular achievements. So I personally feel that hobbies are something which is not mandatory at all. But if let's say your resume is not filling or you don't have a lot of information to add, then worst case you can do that. So that is something which I think. Weber is asking interest in stock market. Should it be mentioned? Yeah, Manraj, you're saying something?
I think that's a very interesting question. Which even I get that. I don't really know what to write in my resume. Should I put my hobbies? I don't have a lot to say. And I think part of the module, and I don't mean to give it away, is that students will actually learn how to structure what they've done throughout their lives whether it's school, whether it's their achievements, how do we portray that in the resume to capture the attention of the interviewer is something which they'll granularly learn in the program. So I think that's something which will, solve a lot of questions will get addressed that, how do I portray myself? Can I write my hobbies? Can I not? So I think
Right.
adding on to what you said, that makes a lot of sense.
Right. Cool. So Mansi, I think you have a question. Is there a placement guarantee in the Career Accelerator program? Again, like there is no placement guarantee as such. Having said that, we will definitely refer your candidature and CVs to the organizations whom we have again network with, and of course, like placement assistance would always be given to you, and that is something which we can ensure. But again, placement guarantee is something which like no one can do actually, because it also depends on how do you perform on the interview on the day of the interview. And rest assured, we'll make you job ready in the sense that we'll train you in a manner which will help you to crack all these interviews which are there. So that is something which is there. And let's take the last question in the interest of time. Should we mention client names in interviews, or we need to refrain if they ask? So again, like this is an interesting question. Usually the interviewers will not ask you the client's name. They are also professional enough to understand that confidentiality is something which is which is informed, and they also know that okay, this is confidential. If they ask and insist you, you can first mention that okay, I'm sorry sir, it is confidential, not to disclose the client's name, because we have signed an NDA, or we have signed some document which requires us not to disclose the client. Having said this, I can tell you that it was the second largest pharma company in India, having a scale of XYZ. So this is something which you should mention whenever this is happening. But trust me, recruiters are very professional enough to understand that they are not going to typically ask you the name of the client. And even if they directly ask you, and if you think you can disclose, again, this is not being recorded. So let's say the conversation between you and interview is not going to get recorded. So again, it's up to you whether you want to disclose. If you have that rapport with the interviewer, that's fine. But this is not going to happen in most of the cases, is what I would say. Cool. So thank you guys. I think it's 10:15. So again, we'll take a pause here. But thank you so much for attending the session. I hope you liked it. If you do liked it, please share it with all your friends, and of course share it on your social media, jotting down what did you learn from the session. And thank you so much once again for joining in. If you are interested to crack management trainee roles, we are doing one more webinar tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. sharp, where we have called three speakers, one from HUL, one from Mahindra, and one from Hero Motocorp, where we are going to discuss about how did they crack their management trainee profiles. So you can register for the webinar, which is happening at 10 a.m. tomorrow. And we'll also circulate the link of the webinar in our CA community, which we have created on WhatsApp. So thank you so much once again, everyone, for joining this webinar. We hope that we could add some value, and have a lovely evening ahead, and see you tomorrow.
Thanks a lot, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your time and attention. And thank you, Kushal, for being in conversation with me. It's lovely as always. Thanks a lot,
Thanks.
everyone.
Thank you so much, Manuraj. Thanks. Thanks, everyone.